I told him. I told him everything, and the second the words left my lips, I realized I had destroyed more than just our fragile peace. I had shattered him too. His eyes, wide and uncomprehending, stared straight through me, as if the man I loved had vanished the instant I admitted the truth. It started as a quiet evening. We were sitting on the couch, the glow of the TV painting our faces in soft blue light, but I couldn't watch, couldn't focus. My hands were trembling against the mug of tea I barely held. I had rehearsed this confession for days, weeks maybe, overthinking every syllable. But now, in the quiet living room, the words escaped before I could stop them. I didn't come straight home that night, I whispered. I saw him. I kissed him. The air froze. His coffee cup slipped from his hand, spilling hot liquid onto the rug, and all I could hear was the dull thump of it hitting the floor. He didn't speak. He just stared, a mixture of shock, betrayal, and disbelief etched into every line of his face. I thought maybe the silence was punishment, but no, I realized slowly that it was grief, deep and personal, and it cut sharper than any anger could have. I tried to explain. I wanted him to understand the chaos inside me, the way loneliness had pressed in on me when he was working late night after night, the exhaustion that had made me weak, human, and horribly flawed. It wasn't about love, I said, my voice breaking. I didn't stop loving you. But the words sounded hollow even to my own ears. He finally spoke, voice low, barely above a whisper. How long? The question hit like a punch to the stomach. How long? How long had I carried this secret? How long had I let my momentary lapse of judgment become a canyon between us? I felt my throat tighten, tears stinging, and I murmured, "One night, only one." His laugh was bitter, short, like metal scraping against glass. "One night," he repeated, but it wasn't funny. It wasn't a joke. It was disbelief, sharp and cutting, and suddenly all the excuses, all the explanations I had lined up, felt worthless. I wanted to reach for him, to tell him I was sorry, to make him understand that it was a mistake born of weakness and confusion. But he recoiled, and I saw the distance in his eyes, the same eyes that had always looked at me with warmth now filled with a cold, empty pain I had never imagined I could cause. For days we didn't speak. Nights were the worst. I would lie awake, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint sound of his breathing across the room. It was a different sound now, distant, disconnected, as if he was there but not really there. Every time I reached out, hoping to bridge the gap, he pulled back, and I learned painfully that some things couldn't be fixed with apologies or tears. I watched him unravel in ways I couldn't stop. He stopped laughing at the little things, stopped asking me about my day, stopped sleeping in the same bed. He would sit silently at the kitchen table, staring at his coffee, lost in his thoughts. I wanted to shout, to beg, to explain, but I knew nothing I could say would reach him anymore. My confession had changed everything. Then one evening he came home with an envelope in his hand. No words. Just the envelope. Inside there were letters I hadn't written, messages from him to someone else. Messages I hadn't meant to find, but had stumbled upon while looking for my own courage. I felt my stomach twist. The betrayal was a mirror now. I had opened a door I thought I was closing, only to find that the man I loved had his own secrets. I confronted him, voice shaking, tears falling freely now. "I told you everything," I said, voice cracking. Why didn't you tell me?" He looked at me then, really looked at me, and the silence was heavier than any confession. Finally he whispered, "Because some truths, you have to live with yourself before you can share them with anyone." I wanted to hate him, to push him away, but the sight of his eyes, haunted, broken and searching, made me collapse into the truth that love, even when betrayed, is messy and complicated. He hadn't been waiting for me to confess so he could punish me. He had been carrying his own weight, a quiet storm I hadn't seen until now. We didn't fix things immediately. In fact, we barely spoke for weeks. But slowly, painfully, small gestures began to bridge the gap. A hand on the back of a chair, a lingering glance, a shared cup of tea in the morning light. We learned that confession didn't have to be the end. It could also be the beginning of honesty, of rebuilding, though the foundations would never be the same. One night, much later, I asked him why he never screamed, never yelled, never stormed out. His answer was simple, devastating in its clarity. "Because I loved you enough to stay, even when it hurt more than I thought I could bear." And in that moment I realized the power of truth. It shatters, it burns, it leaves scars, but it can also cleanse, if the heart is willing to endure the pain and keep beating anyway. My confession had destroyed his world, but it also revealed a part of his heart I had never fully seen. I don't know if we will ever be the same. Some nights the memory of that night, the kiss, the betrayal, the raw confession, returns like a shadow that cannot be chased away. But now, instead of hiding from it, we acknowledge it. We sit with it, and somehow, in the quiet aftermath, there is a strange, fragile peace. The truth about that night broke us, but it also taught us that love, no matter how wounded, can sometimes survive its own ruins. And in that survival I found a sliver of hope I thought I had lost forever.